We have done a ton of huge projects here on the farm, and we've made a lot of great progress. Over the past couple of years we've owned this farm, we've done a lot to make the farm look beautiful. But there's one area in particular that has always been a bit of a sore spot, and that's the entranceway and the front fence row going along the road. It is just as bland and as boring as it possibly could be. And when you're driving by, it doesn't really give you that wow factor. It doesn't really cause you to stop and stare. It really just ultimately kind of divides up, it breaks the eye between what is incredible and what is just a normal everyday road and a ditch. And so what we did was we went to the drawing board and we decided that we would do something about it. And what we stumbled upon was probably one of the most ambitious projects we'll ever take on here on the farm. And I think when it's all said and done, in a couple years, I think people are going to drive hours just to come check it out. Before we got started, I wanted to create kind of a vision board, just to kind of see if what I was thinking was not only feasible, but just kind of think about how it would be laid out. And rather than go to Instagram and Pinterest for my vision board and my inspiration, I instead tapped into my childhood. And a couple things stood out. Now, when we're thinking about a huge project here on the farm, we do everything huge here. We do everything kind of counterculture. We do things that are larger than life. And so I wanted it to be big, and I wanted to cause people to stop them in their tracks and give them a reason to pause, because I think that's so important in life, is just to literally stop and find points of interest in your life that cause you to stop and slow down your pace of life. And so we wanted it to have wow factor. And there's a couple things that stood out in my mind that were very nostalgic to me. One was actually at my old house. When I was growing up, where I started these YouTube videos, at my old house, we had out in front of our den window a scented viburnum. And if you've ever smelled a scented viburnum before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I can only describe it as one of the most beautiful, soft, delicate, sweet smells that I've ever smelled in my entire life. And this was a really large bush. We had several of them throughout the property, but the one that was in the den on cool to warm summer mornings, my parents would open up the window to get a cross breeze, and that would naturally bring in the smell of these scented viburnums into the house. And I remember waking up so many mornings, walking downstairs, grabbing breakfast, and the first thing that hit me was the smell that never got old. It was just literally the most quintessential spring to summer, early summer morning smell that I remember as a kid. And the bush was absolutely beautiful. My second point of inspiration was a rhododendron house. Now, this was online. I saw this actually being posted around on several news outlets. This lady basically she planted a bunch of rhododendrons near her home, and as they grew up, they never pruned them, they never cut them, and it completely enveloped the entire house, basically to where you could only see the chimney. And people would stop, they'd come take pictures, they would drive hours for this absolutely incredible sight of basically a house being completely enveloped by these huge, beautiful kind of red and purple flowers. Absolutely stunning. And I loved that because it had that wow factor. It had that kind of very different look to it that causes someone to stop. It doesn't look like your normal houses that are landscaped with bushes and flowering shrubs. This was wow. And then my third point of inspiration was actually also from my childhood. My parents had a cottage that was north of here. And when we would go up there, we would drive by a very prominent house. And the prominent house was actually owned by the Carhart family. Now, the Carhart estate was located about 30 minutes from where my parents' cottage was. And when we would drive by, they had planted their entire fence row. It was an old wooden fence. So it had the old, the fence posts and the slats were all wood, and it had kind of weathered to that beautiful gray color. And then behind that, they had planted probably 50 to 75 years ago, lilacs. And the lilacs were fully mature, filled in, you couldn't see through them. And it was essentially this privacy hedge of nothing but the most fragrant, beautiful lilacs that essentially, again, masked the property, gave it privacy. So when you went through the gates, I had the privilege of going and entering the estate one time in my life, and it was when the estate was actually up for sale. They opened it up, they had an open house, and we went and just checked it out. And when you drive in, it was almost like you're entering a secret garden. There was no visibility from the road, and you enter in what is this beautiful, flowering, scented hedgerow that just fills the air with smells of flowers and sweetness and sugar. And you go through, and it opens up into this absolutely beautiful manicured estate. And it just is simply one of my core memories. I've always just still gives me goosebumps even to today. And those three components were really the foundation for what gave us the inspiration for what we wanted to do right here on the farm. So taking that inspiration from my childhood and things that I really loved and stuff that caused me to stop and really be wowed, I decided to implement that here. And once I got down to the drawing board, I thought to myself, how do we actually do that? What would that look like? And what I finalized on, and what I thought would be just the craziest project ever, something I've never seen done before, is planting out literally 1,200 feet end to end lilacs and viburnums. This will create a huge, lush privacy fence, topping out around 7 feet tall. I didn't want to go too much taller. I didn't want it to be towering over the fence line. I wanted to kind of be capped out right at about the top of the fence line to kind of mask the fence so you don't really see it. But I also wanted to be kind of a low maintenance, deer-proof fence. So it needed to be deer-proof because this is outside of the deer fence, and we didn't want to be feeding the deer and be, killing trees, killing shrubs by feeding them. So it needed to be deer-proof, which that met the criteria. Viburnums and lilacs are both deer-proof. We wanted to cap it out about 7 feet tall by about 7 feet wide at full size. And we wanted to plant the entire fence row, which is absolutely insane for a fence row of this size. I mean, the Carhart estate, just for a reference, is only about 500 linear feet of fence. This is 1,200 linear feet. This is twice the size as the Carhart estate was. And that alone was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. To make matters even a little bit crazier, I thought about alternating lilacs and scented viburnum. Now they'll flower at slightly different stages, but they're both kind of a spring to early summer blooming shrub. And some lilacs can also bloom several times throughout the season. So you kind of can get different varieties. But I wanted stuff that's going to be highly fragrant, kind of similar height plants. So they're all kind of the same uniform size, but two different species. We have lilacs and viburnums basically alternating. So we'll have a lilac, right? And then we'll have a viburnum. And then we'll have a lilac and we'll have a viburnum. And that is crazy. But it also was certifiably crazy to try to find the quantities we were looking for. So I reached out to someone that I thought would be equally as crazy and down for the project, and that was Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs, and they took me on. Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs took us on, and they said, we'd love to take you on with your crazy idea and your vision. They thought that would be awesome, and so they sent us 200 shrubs. This is crazy. I've never seen this many shrubs in my entire life. Now they are smaller, but they're going to grow. And that is what we wanted. We didn't want big wieldy 3-gallon, 5-gallon pots because that's, imagine the space that would take up. And just shipping them to us and all of that was logistically a whole lot easier with smaller shrubs that are going to grow fairly fast, especially when we give them the love and care that we're going to give them. And so they sent us 100 scented viburnums and 100 lilacs. Now the variety, this is known as Centera Double Blue. Absolutely incredible. I'll see if we can find a picture. If we can, I'll have Hannah throw a picture of the Centera Double Blue. It's exactly what I remember the color being from my childhood. Only these are a lot more they're a lot showier of a flower than kind of your standard old school lilac. And they're also going to be a semi-dwarf. They're going to stay around kind of 7 feet tall at full maturity, which is great. And then we got Spice Cowboy. Now this is a scented viburnum, and Spice Cowboy tops out again around that 7-foot mark because we want the lilac and the scented viburnum to both get about the same size and height so that it becomes kind of a privacy fence, a hedgerow. And so I just want to thank Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs for partnering with us on this, because this project simply would not be possible without them. Finding not only the quantities available, but also a partner that can help us kind of cut costs on this project and split the cost on this absolutely amazing project really is going to be the difference maker between making it happen or just keeping on dreaming about it for years, never actually making it happen. So special thanks to them, and really recommend checking out their shrubs. They are absolutely beautiful. The first thing I need to do is I need to turn all these weeds under. We got some clover, some ryegrass, a lot of other weeds that are growing up where we're gonna be planting. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna follow our stake line. So we have a nice straight line set 12 feet off from our fence here. And that's going to give us a nice straight line with plenty of room to mow around, but we're going to till this first so we can turn all those weeds under. That's going to help to not only create organic material to biodegrade and feed our shrubs over time, but it's also going to reduce weed pressure. And then the most important thing we're going to do is when we're done tilling, we're going to cover the soil with some weed fabric, which is going to help to prevent future weeds from sprouting. And to make sure that we don't have any weed pressure, because as they're starting out small, we got to make sure they get established. After we till, that's going to turn under some weeds. It's going to make sure that we suppress that growth, but then also to continue to suppress that growth and help things fully break down, reducing weed pressure by probably about 90 to 95%. We're going to add a weed fabric. Now we're going to be adding a semi-permeable weed fabric like this stuff right here. This is DuraWeb. And this is top of the line. When I went to the store to pick this stuff up from our landscape supply store, the guy actually asked me what I was doing with it all. That's how crazy of a project this is, because when he asked me how many linear feet I'd need, I said I needed about 1,200 linear feet. And he goes, "You mean square feet?" I said, no, linear feet. And he goes, "What are you doing? That's like, we might not even have enough," is what he told me. And so it turns out we didn't have enough of these small 125 linear foot rolls. We had to go up to a couple 300-foot linear rolls just to make this happen, because we literally bought them out. And so all the landscapers in our area are going to be a little bit sour because our one project used as much as they had on hand. And so really excited about this stuff. This is really great. Like I said, it's going to suppress the weeds, but it's also going to make sure that water can penetrate through so that the shrubs get water when it does rain, and that cuts down on water consumption, which is really important. So it's going to give them a fighting chance. It's going to cover the soil, and it's going to make things look neat and tidy, and we're going to put mulch on top of that to really give it a nice finished look. That brings us to the wood chips we chose. So we didn't go with just our standard wood chips, our triple shredded mulch we typically use around our fruit trees. We wanted something that was not only going to be really showy, but also last a lot longer. The thing with triple shredded is it breaks down and degrades into compost, which is great, and it amends the soil, it helps hold on to water, it smothers weeds, but it lasts very little time. I mean, we're talking, we have to reapply about every 1.5 years the mulch around our fruit trees. Whereas with these, we want to make sure that it sticks and it stays for a long time. So we went with an extra chunky fresh chip mulch. And when I say extra chunky, this stuff is super chunky stuff. I mean, it looks like stuff you'd throw in your smoker. If you had a smoker barbecue, this is the type of stuff that, I mean, it is just really showy, beautiful, chunky, big chunky stuff that is going to take a lot longer to break down, making sure that it stays fresh, doesn't need to be reapplied. So we went the extra mile and had a bunch of that delivered, and I'm really excited about how that's going to look for, just for the aesthetic, but then also for the functionality long term. Now that we got the line all tilled up, looks absolutely incredible. We're gonna lay down the weed fabric and get that all laid out. So what better time to start than now? All right, so Alex, if you take that end, we'll bury the end so it's weighted. And then that way we can just kind of kick it. So while we're just killing time This is not a fast process by any means. I feel like that social media video where the guy he's kicking a rock every day until it turns completely round. That's like literally what I'm doing right now. I have kicked this tube at least 300 times already, and we're maybe like 30% of the way. But I thought, while we're killing some time, I might as well at least give you some growing guide tips on viburnums and lilacs, since they both share very similar growing conditions. If you're thinking about doing something at your house with lilacs and viburnums, first of all, I'd suggest it. They are absolutely incredible. The smell, the color, the fact that they flower early, they're early beauty, and they are just, wow, a good choice. But you want to make sure that the soil you have is really well draining. Viburnums and lilacs do not like sitting in water. That's called wet feet, as the industry would call it. They don't like wet feet. So we actually got really lucky here because the soil we have is actually what's considered sandy loam. So we got some beautiful loam soil here. It is just really nice. It holds its texture, but look, I mean, it just crumbles. It is absolutely the best soil you could possibly ask for. And then on top of that, they don't like to be overwatered. So what's really nice is the fact that we are putting them in kind of a low maintenance area. We're putting them here where we've got the good, well draining soil. They're going to receive water on a pretty regular basis when it rains. But in the summertime, we can come through with like a water jug, like a water tote, and basically just water the base of each tree, or each shrub, I should say. And they'll be plenty fine being kind of semi-neglected. Now, viburnums and lilacs also need to be fertilized on a fairly regular basis because they are notoriously slow growers. They're not going to grow, they might only grow about 1 foot to 2 feet per year. And so when we're planting them as a little, I wouldn't call it a seedling, but like a young shrub, it's going to take all summer for them to put on basically about 1 foot of growth. Next year, they might grow to be about 2 to 3 feet tall. The year after that, they might be about 4 to 5 feet if we're lucky. And so it's going to take a good 4 to 5 years for them to reach full mature height. And so in order to expedite that, we're going to want to give them some fertilizer. We're going to be feeding them with an all-purpose balanced fertilizer. We use Trifecta Plus. That's what we use on our vegetable garden. That's what we use on our fruit trees. That's what we use on our ornamentals. Everything gets Trifecta Plus. So that's what we're going to be using. But you just want to make sure that you give them lots of fertilizer, lots of food, so they can grow to their optimum potential. Now, when it comes to soil pH and conditions like the actual quality of the soil, you want to make sure that the soil is fairly neutral. Slightly acidic can even be a benefit. Soils that are around 7 is great, but if it's 6.5, even 6, that's totally fine. You should make sure that they're not terribly alkaline because they won't really love that as much. Sunlight needs, you really want to make sure you put them in a very sunny location. Full sun is preferred. This location here gets about as full sun gets. We're talking 7 to 9 hours, 10 hours of sunlight. And obviously that's extra sun. At least at a very minimum, 6 to 7 hours of sun is probably required because, again, this is a flowering shrub. You really want to make sure that it's growing fast, but also putting out tons of blooms. If you find that you can only put it in a location that gets about 3 to 4 hours of sun, it's just not going to thrive. So you want to put it in a nice full sun location and it'll do really great. All right, so we are getting ready to plant. Actually, we already kind of started planting a little bit, but we just kind of want to get a feel for the spacing and stuff. So we are spacing these about 6.5 feet apart, and that's going to give us plenty of room that when they grow about 3 to 3.5 feet in either direction, they're basically just about going to be touching once they're fully grown. So all we're really doing is just, like I said, we're getting the measurements made. We're cutting a little X in the weed fabric. And this is by far the best way to do this because it allows the plant to grow and expand. But these little flaps fold right back on the stem, keeping the weed pressure down to a minimum. So we're just gonna make our little X there, dig our hole, and then viburnum's going in. Now, I wanna make sure to kind of tickle these roots a little bit because they're definitely coiled around quite a bit in these pots. So I give them a little loosening up, just like that. The plants look great, by the way. Like I said, don't let the size fool you. These will grow really, they'll grow really fast their first year as they get established, and then they'll grow, you know, about a foot to 2 feet a year. So not incredibly fast in the big scope of things, but by the end of the summer, it won't even look like the same plant. All right, looking pretty good. Into the hole it goes, and then just tucking the soil around the root ball and moving on to the next plant. Now we only have to do that 200 more times. Oh man, well, that's why it's a day project. This was the project for the day because it was gonna take all day. All right, and the last plant to go in is this right here, the lilac. So I am really excited about how this is going to look. I could not be happier. And I just want to give a huge shout out to our farm crew today for helping me out, making this thing look absolutely amazing. I think this is going to be incredible. And I hope you guys will let me know in the comments box down below if you're, excited, if you'd like to see more updates on this. I also want to give a huge thank you to Proven Winners Color Choice. They are amazing, absolutely amazing, and I'd recommend checking them out. I'll have links to their socials and to their website in the description box down below so you can check them out and check out some of these amazing plants. Like I said, this was a project of epic proportions, but even just a couple around your house can they can change your life. Like I said, just the simplest bush, just the scented viburnum outside my den window was something that I remembered every single day, still remember to this day, and I'm happy to have something like a part of my childhood here on the farm. So thank you guys so much for watching, and that's a wrap for today. Tomorrow we're gonna fill it up with mulch. You won't see that, but I'll post some pictures over on our Facebook page of the finished project when it's all said and done. So thank you guys so much for coming along. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you all to grow bigger. We'll see you later, bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care. Bye.